Hello and welcome back. Today we'll be talking about the cognitive model of social phobia by Clark and Wells, which, long story short, is a general scheme of how social anxiety works and why it persists even when a phobic is exposed to stressful situations. This is the fourth video in the series about social anxiety, so if you haven't seen the first three, I'd recommend checking those out because they make much more sense when you watch them in order. This video will be a long one. I personally think that it's the most important one as well because it helps you understand where your social anxiety comes from and why it won't go away. But before we move on, this video is brought to you by BetterHelp, which is a website that offers online counseling. So BetterHelp reached out to me in the middle of creating this series and they asked whether I would be interested in mentioning them in this video. And as you may have noticed, I've been quite reluctant to advertise anything on this channel throughout the years because I don't like the idea of advertising things that I do not believe in or companies that are not as ethical as I'd like them to be. So BetterHelp is obviously different. I think it's a brilliant idea, especially for people who travel a lot, who don't have that much time, and especially for people with social anxiety. Because obviously a lot of you will be too scared to try real life therapy. So this might be a kind of a preparation before you actually try real life therapy. I'm going to be completely honest. I personally think you should always choose real life therapy over online counseling if you can. But people are different. They need different things. Still, I think that BetterHelp can be a lot more convenient than normal, average real-life therapy, because this is literally having someone who's qualified and who cares right in your pocket all the time, and you don't have to wait for a whole week or maybe even longer until you can go back and talk to your therapist. As I've said before, just remember that I do not have a degree in psychology. I'm not a therapist, not a psychiatrist. I'm just trying to help people out, but still, every single thing I have said in this series and I will say in this video is based on science. It's based on scientific papers and academic literature, so it's not like I'm making this up, and every single word I say was written down by someone who has a degree in psychology. Okay? And finally, moving on. As I've mentioned in the previous video, the notion that social anxiety goes away if you simply get out of your comfort zone a couple of times is not true. If it does go away, it's not social anxiety. That's actually a part of the diagnostic criteria in DSM-5. The feared social situation is avoided or endured with intense anxiety, distress, and the symptoms have to persist for at least 6 months. Take it from someone who's been struggling with social anxiety for nearly 20 years. I put myself out of my comfort zone. The anxiety never went away though, it actually kept getting worse over the years. And I remember my social anxiety peaked when I was 27, 28. So the question is, why does social phobia persist despite regular exposure to feared social situations? The Clark-Wells model was developed to explain this, and it's a tool your therapist might use during your therapy sessions. The model also provides a treatment program which aims to reverse the process described. Okay, so this is the model. I will do my best to explain it in the easiest way possible because I truly believe that understanding how your social anxiety works is the key to getting rid of it. Just keep in mind that this isn't the only model that exists. However, out of all of them, I find this to be the most accurate and the most understandable explanation of my own anxiety, which is why I choose to share this particular model. So, let's begin. A social phobic enters the social situation. That activates a series of assumptions about themselves and their social world. These assumptions can be divided into 3 categories. Number 1. Excessively high standards for social performance. For example, I must not show any signs of weakness. I must always sound intelligent and fluent. I should only speak when other people pause. I should always have something interesting to say. Number 2. Conditional beliefs concerning the consequences of performing a certain way. For example, if I disagree with someone, they will think I am stupid, will reject me. If my hands shake, I blush, or show other signs of anxiety, people will think I'm incompetent, odd, or stupid. If I am quiet, people will think I am boring. If people get to know me, they won't like me. Number 3. Unconditional negative beliefs about the self. For example, I'm odd, I'm different, I'm unlikable, unacceptable, I'm boring, I'm stupid. Such assumptions lead individuals to perceive some social situations as dangerous, since they assume they will fail to achieve their desired level of performance. For example, I will shake, I'll make a fool of myself. When someone with social anxiety believes they are in danger of negative evaluation by others, they shift their attention to detailed observation of themselves. So basically, they focus on themselves. Then, they use all that information gathered through self-monitoring to come up with an image of how they think they appear to other people and what others are thinking about them. They usually ignore this confirmatory evidence, such as other people's responses. Of course, that self-generated image that these people see in their heads is almost always extremely exaggerated, and most people who interact with a social phobic individual don't actually notice their nervousness. And now, why don't patients benefit from the non-occurrence of a feared catastrophe when in a public situation? Why all the exposure to social interactions doesn't seem to be working to reduce the anxiety? That's when safety behaviors come into play. Safety-seeking behaviors are supposed to prevent or minimize the feared catastrophe. If the catastrophe then fails to occur, individuals with social anxiety ascribe the non-occurrence to the safety behaviors rather than acknowledging that the situation is less dangerous than they previously thought. So, for example, if a meeting goes well, the patient will assume that it only did because of all the preparation and memorizing they did beforehand, and not because they actually proved to be socially skilled and capable of handling the situation well. What's more, safety behaviors can actually trigger all the reactions a social phobic fears. So, wearing a jacket to hide the sweat will make them even more sweaty. Trying to memorize what one has been saying makes it harder to keep track of the conversation, so the person gets lost and fears they seem stupid because they did get lost. Most safety behaviors further increase all the self-monitoring, which further reinforces anxiety and reduces attention to others' behavior. Some safety behaviors draw attention to the individual. So, for example, if they speak quietly because they don't like to be the center of attention, people will stare at them even more intensely, trying to hear and understand what they are saying. Finally, some safety behaviors influence other people in a way which partly confirms the social phobic's fears. So, for example, an individual's constant focus on the self makes them seem distant and preoccupied with something else, maybe uninterested in the conversation. Now, others might interpret these as a sign that the phobic person does not like them, and as a consequence, they actually become less friendly. And to close up the vicious circle of social anxiety, we've got somatic and cognitive symptoms. Patients are particularly concerned about those because they are scared that others will notice them. So, for example, sweating, feeling hot in the face, tremor, mental blanks. These symptoms are then interpreted as signs of failure to meet their actual desired standards of social performance. Now, because the patients think that these symptoms are incredibly important, they tend to focus on self in search of these symptoms, which again takes us back. And of course, as always, focusing on these tends to exaggerate the intensity of the somatic symptoms as perceived by the patient. So, for example, I might imagine myself sweat dripping all over my face when, in fact, I'm most probably just a little bit shiny. And last but not least, the somatic symptoms can also be enhanced by a variety of safety-seeking behaviors. So for example, if I want to hide my sweaty armpits by wearing a jacket, it'll make me even warmer, and that in turn will make me turn red and make my face sweaty. Now, the core of the model is the self-focused attention and the use of internal information to construct a distorted, negative impression of oneself. So the attention shift causes a reduced noticing of all the external social cues. So whatever is left is processed negatively, in a biased way. So individuals with social anxiety are likely to notice and remember responses from others that they interpret as negative. Most of the time, these responses are actually ambiguous. So what I mean to say is that if you're, for example, giving a speech and you see people are not smiling back at you, you see people writing something down in their notebooks, you might take that as a negative sign. You might think that they are not interested, that they are bored, that they don't like you. When in reality, your speech is so interesting and so thought-provoking that they don't feel the need to smile, that, they keep their faces focused. They write down everything you say, which obviously is actually a good thing. Long story short, you focus so much on yourself in search for the mistakes you make that you forget to focus on other people, and you don't focus on how they really respond to you and what you do. And last but not least, there's overthinking before and after the social situation. So social phobics experience anxiety when anticipating a social event. They will think about all the different ways things might go wrong, which causes their level of anxiety to increase. So sometimes this leads the phobic person to avoid the event completely, and other times when they take part in the event, they are already in a self-focused processing mode, expecting failure, which makes them less likely to notice any signs of being accepted by other people. The end of the event does not bring much relief though, because that's when the second part of the overanalyzing starts, and obviously during most social interactions, people won't just pat you on the back and tell you you did good. They like you and they think you're highly intelligent. So without those unambiguous signs of social approval, you start to deconstruct the event. Since you are highly focused on yourself and all the negative physical and emotional symptoms, you've probably missed out on a bunch of positive reactions of and from the other person. So you likely remember this as a highly negative experience, definitely a lot more negative than it actually was. And that is later added to a list of all your past failures, and that will strengthen your belief in your social inadequacy. And that, my dear friends, is where social anxiety has come full circle. Now, I know that was a lot to take in, and you might want to watch that again to fully understand. But to make it even easier for you, I will now explain this using a real-life example. And this is also what I meant when I said that you might build one of those models during your therapy sessions. So, let's begin. You're supposed to meet an authority figure, someone whose work you admire, to talk about your project that they are interested in. Days before the meeting, your anxiety starts to go crazy. Your mind produces all the different scenarios of how things might go wrong. If you start to speak, you'll stutter, you'll sweat, your mind will go blank, you won't have anything interesting to say, and he'll notice. When that happens, you'll feel embarrassed because you think he'll assume that's strange behavior. When your mind goes blank and you won't be able to form sentences, he'll think you're stupid, and that, mixed with your weirdness, will make him dislike you and decide that he does not want to be involved in your project. To get ready for the meeting, you wear clothes to hide the sweat, you wear makeup to hide the blushing, you rehearse all the different ways the conversation might go, you memorize it, and get 2 shots of alcohol to feel a bit less stressed. You finally enter the social situation. All those negative images keep popping up in your head, so you start focusing on the self to look for signs of failure. All the anxiety symptoms kick in. Or so you think. instantly an image of how he sees you pops into your mind. You're probably all red, sweat dripping down your face, hands shaking, voice shaking, skipping words, and unable to form sentences. You avoid eye contact to hide your anxiety. The clothes make you feel even hotter, which in turn makes you blush and sweat even more. Makeup all messed up, which makes you even more self-conscious. And you're trying to remember what you've memorized before the meeting, so you can't keep up and follow the conversation. But in the end, he asks you a question you were not prepared for, and you completely panic, which makes your mind go blank, and you finally, after what seems like a lifetime, utter 2 sentences in response. He shakes your hand, which obviously is extremely sweaty, and you say goodbye. You go back home and try to remember every single word that left your mouth, and you just can't get rid of the image of yourself that he must have seen. A huge, sweaty, shaky mess with nothing interesting to say. What a failure. Another one on the already existing long list. He didn't smile once, he was staring at me, and he didn't even say anything about the project at the end. I'm sure that's because he didn't like me and he didn't like the project. You feel a sense of shame for the next couple of days, constantly analyzing what happened, again and again and again, until 5 days later, he sends you an email telling you he really likes your idea and would like to be a part of your project. You think to yourself, wow, good thing I memorized everything I had to say before the meeting. If I didn't, he would probably think I'm a complete idiot and wouldn't be interested in working with me. Good thing I put on makeup, good thing I put that jacket on so that he couldn't see how sweaty I was. But what happens at the next meeting? He'll surely remember how weird and anxious you were last time. The idea of that starts making you anxious again, and the vicious circle closes. This, of course, is how a socially anxious individual perceives the situation. The reality, to someone who would have been observing from a distance, was completely different. There was no dripping sweat, no messy makeup, no stuttering, no word skipping. What you were saying sounded interesting and thought-provoking, and that's where his intense staring and no smile-focused face came from. He never said anything about the project, because he liked it, but he had to run it by some other people before committing, and he didn't want to get your hopes up before that happened. You spoke quietly and gently, but he just assumed that's the way you are, maybe even took this as a good sign, a good trait of character. A little bit of nervousness showed him that you truly care about the project. All in all, you made a really good impression, which is why 5 days later he emailed you and decided to get involved in your work. Unfortunately, all the self-monitoring, mind-reading and exaggerated negative image of yourself made you unaware of what was really happening. But even if he said no, would the world end? Do you like every single idea you hear? Just because you don't like an idea, does that instantly make you dislike the person who came up with it? Does that mean you instantly assume every other idea that person proposes will be just as bad? Can you truly please everyone? It's with these questions that I leave you today. Just a reminder that you can follow me on Instagram. The link is in the description. And yeah, I think we've learned a lot today, so now it's time to let off some steam, and I'll see you later. And just a quick note, a few days ago my website with exclusive content went live, so basically if you want to check it out you can click the link in the description. It's kind of a social network. We've got blog posts there, we've got a forum, we've got chats, we've got polls, we've got basically a lot of stuff going on. So you can click through and see if that's, if you find it interesting, if there's anything you'd like to read over there, if you'd like to sign up. That is also a way to support my filmmaking and support this series as well, because the membership fee is $349 a month if you want to get access to all the content. I'd be extremely grateful if you supported me. that means a lot to me. And yeah, thank you for watching and listening, and I will see you very soon. Bye bye.